Here's a quick look into today's episode.
I want to just revisit a statement you made to me that's been stuck in my brain for the last couple of months, which is when you show up to take battalion commander, you will have done every job, almost every job in that battalion. You will be the senior guy and you will know what to do on day one.
If I can remember the statement, I think what I said was, this is the most prepared you have ever been for anything you've ever done in the Army.
You said that to me, and that keeps coming up. And then when I listen to your podcast about preparation for command, and I just read General Work's guidance that he sent to me, I reviewed that. There are a lot of things that I need to think about in specific detail.
Welcome to another episode of Teach Me to Fish, where our purpose is to help leaders better understand what drives people. In today's world, the core of recruiting and retaining talent revolves around leadership. And not just average leadership, but motivated, values-based, inspirational leadership. Our purpose is to get a little bit better every day. Progress equals small victories and stacking habits. Habits like getting up early, working your butt off, learning something new, being positive, and surrounding yourself with phenomenal people. Today's episode is about preparing for command. This is a conversation with Trivius Caldwell, a soon-to-be battalion commander in the 82nd Airborne Division and the Red Devils. We'll talk about philosophies for leadership and visions for organizations. I'll discuss communicating to different audiences, doing, knowing, and becoming through their hands, their head, and their heart. Trivius will lay out a philosophy for endurance, getting to the fight with energy, winning the first fight, planning for the battle, and enduring to win. All this can be a metaphor for operating in a garrison environment and life in general. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation about preparing for command.
I want to just revisit a statement you made to me that's been stuck in my brain for the last couple of months, which is when you show up to take battalion commander, you will have done every job, almost every job in that battalion. You will be the senior guy and you will know what to do on day one. That you said that to me, and that keeps coming up. And then when I listen to your podcast about preparation for command, and I just read General Work's guidance that he sent to me, I reviewed that and started thinking about stuff. There are a lot of things that I need to think about in specific detail. And they all revolve around being very deliberate about my communication and the manner in which I command, with and through staff, command sergeant major, field grades, commanders, and lieutenants. And when you think about it from that perspective, there's a lot. So I jotted down some stuff, but I keep coming back to that comment that you made because I guess it's comforting to know that I'll come in with some intuitiveness, some idea of knowing what I'm doing and knowing what I see,
Yeah, and it's funny how you can say the same sentence to a lot of different people and they all translate it slightly different. If I can remember the statement, I think what I said was, this is the most prepared you have ever been for anything you've ever done in the Army, period, is to be a battalion commander. Because you've done all those things, you are so prepared. It doesn't mean you're not going to see things every day that you've never seen before. It doesn't mean you're not going to do things that are going to be really, really challenging, that are going to be gut-wrenching. They are. But what it means is when you were a company commander, you didn't have any idea what you were doing. When you became a field grade, that was the first time anybody had ever made you do something, had to do something like that. But when you become a battalion commander, all the things that you are responsible for, you have done before, and you've seen it done a bunch of times, and you've probably done most of them in combat in some way, shape, or form. So you've done it in training, you've done it in combat, you've done it in garrison. That's what I mean by you are so prepared to be a battalion commander. So don't psych yourself out too much.
Yeah. I tell you, I sat down and just kind of made a list. I started to think about, we had this conversation about a podcast I just did that I call it rambling, but, I just talked about leadership tips for lieutenants and junior officers. And it focused around those two questions, who are you and why do you do what you do? But then the conversation we had today had to do with communication and the importance of audiences, because not everybody's going to pick up what I'm putting down, right? I mean, it needs to be simple, sweet, and off the stage, right? And the different audiences. Can you just reiterate that in terms of the communication echelon that you talked about, the three different audiences?
Yeah, I'd love to. So you're going to say the same sentence and three different audiences are going to hear it three different ways. They're going to interpret it different. And so you need to understand who you're speaking to. The three ways you communicate to people is you communicate to them how to use their hands, using their hands, how you communicate with their head, and you communicate with their heart. And so if you communicate with someone's hands, you're compelling them. You're teaching them how to do things. This is the do. We used to say be, no, do. I think it starts with doing, up front. This is not the why. Not everybody needs to know why. Right? Your 18 to 22-year-old soldiers, they're not interested in why. They want to know how to do it. Your brand new lieutenants, they want to know how to do it, how to knock out a bunker, how to do platoon attack, right? It isn't like, here's your left and right limit, Sergeant, and please feel free to explore the space. No, this is how you do it. This is how you knock out a bunker. This is how you hold formation. This is how you follow an SOP and you do checklists, right? So you're compelling people to do things at those levels. It's okay to talk to them that way, right? You're not being a jerk. You're being direct, right? That's all they want to know. They want to know how to do things. And when you show them how to do things, you'll gain their trust because they know my commander knows how to do these things. Or you start to delegate down to somebody who can teach them exactly how to do it. And then you'll gain trust because they know my leaders know how to do it. The second audience is when you start to get to your people that are, 24 to 28, 29, 30. This is when you start to get into your staff sergeants, your sergeant first classes. This is where you get into your captains, maybe your junior majors, right? And you're teaching them, you're talking to their head. You want to get them to comply. You want to get them to understand the knowing. This is the be, know, do. So this is doing, now we knowing. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing it a certain way? You teach them how to do it. You teach them the structure behind it. You start putting the bricks, putting these things together. This is why we do platoon attack. This is why platoon attack builds to a company attack, a company defense and such, and how to do tactics. This is why we do SGLIs and DD93s. This is why we do it, right? The first audience just needed to know, do that shit. Do it.
Yeah.
Right? The second audience, okay, now you're starting to get into the why. So they can get out there and understand it. And then the third way you communicate to people is through their heart. This is the becoming. Not the be, no, do. This is the becoming, and it's going towards the end. This is where you get your field grade officers, your battalion commanders. This is where you start to get your first sergeants and your sergeant majors. They start becoming what they want to be. This is when they figured out that the military or the army is a calling for them. It's no longer a 9-to-5 job. This is a commitment to their calling, right? And they have a desire to do well and to do the things that are most important to them. They want to do it. Right? So you're communicating to their heart. That's three different ways to say the same thing, right? Or three different, if you're trying to communicate why it's important to go do live fires and why we understand in the battle drills and why doing the basics is important, you're going to have to communicate it slightly different, three different ways to those three different audiences as we go forward. What parts of that can I kind of clarify?
Oh no, that was perfect. I mean, the way you talk about the hands, the head, and the heart equating to the be, no, do speaks to me because I think about it from that perspective too, but I never put it in terms of hands, head, and heart. I think that makes sense. And hearing you talk made me think of my battalion commander when I was a company commander, Joseph Kuchin. I think he's the assistant chief of staff up at 18th Airborne Corps right now, something like that. But he would come out on our platoon attacks and FTXs at night, and he would lay in the prone and pull out his compass, and he would show lieutenants like the difference between an azimuth pointed at say 68 degrees from this vantage point, and then you shift over couple meters and that same 68 degrees is looking at something different, something to that minute detail. He was able to communicate the calculus and the precision and the attention to detail, and we all hated it initially. We was like, why is the old man out here? And then we got to thinking about what he was doing, and we were really grateful for that. So I take that point to heart. And the other thing I was thinking about today, and this is what I jotted down, took me back to John Maxwell's book, The 360-Degree Leader, because I read that when I was a lieutenant, and I started thinking about reading General Work's document. What is the narrative of the battalion outside of the battalion? Is it a us or is it a team narrative? Like, be deliberate about what that looks like to lead up. so you don't create an us versus them from a staff perspective. And then across, are we team players with adjacent battalions? Are company commanders getting out of their foxhole a little bit and trying to share knowledge across echelon, across adjacent units? And then down, how do you perform those azimuth checks to make sure that what you're saying is resonating? I think General Rourke did every quarter he would do 45-minute azimuth checks at the movie theater. But something like that to bring folks in to make sure what you're saying is actually resonating. I have a term I call walking slowly through the halls. I think I got that from Maxwell, 21 Laws of Leadership, something like that. But getting out of the office and just walking around and, reiterating that one sentence that you say you have to say 7 times.
Yeah. 17 times.
17 times. Yeah, the lowest echelon. So I was thinking about a 360-degree approach to leadership to get at the hands, the head, and the heart.
Yeah.
So that was one thing I wrote about in trying to sift through everything I gotta think through. You know?
And your organization, not on the first day, but soon after, your organization will start to follow and will be your reputation. And so if Trivius is a team player and will give the shirt off his back to his teammates, your organization will follow. And it will become that. And likewise, if you are selfish and you are, only looking out for you, your organization will become the type of organization that only looks out for itself, that only cares about winning all the accolades, and is not interested in helping out its teammates. Mm-hmm. And you might not mean for it to be to follow your who you are and what you're about. It will, though. And so that becomes a self-reflection, right? If you ask somebody after 6 months and say, what is our organization known for? What they're saying is, this is what Trivius is known for. And if they say things like, your organization is great team players, like they would give their shirt off their back for their teammate on their left and right. But your organization struggles with systems, right? Your organization struggles down in the motor pool. It struggles with maintenance. It's always a little bit behind on your, your readiness metrics and stuff. Yes, it goes to the field and people have a great time when they're in the field, but they're really not getting much done while they're out there, right? Their qualification numbers are low. They, not a ton of your people are getting expert. You see what's happening is they're saying what you are. Like, because that's what you have created. That's what the organization will become. It'll become a reflection of who you are and your reputation out there. What they're really saying is Trivius, creates a great culture and a great climate, but he struggles with getting the exact details, and the exacting details done. And that's where you can start to be self-reflective and say, okay, how do I get better at that? How do we as an organization then get better at that?
Yeah. I got to thinking about, that legacy would look like and how my reputation would permeate. And the same term kept coming up, and I wrote this down. I would like to have an organization that prides itself on endurance, right? A philosophy of endurance. And when I say that, there's just 4 things that come up for me. All of this philosophy of endurance is guided by warfighting, right? To be experts in our craft, to understand the significance of that. And readiness is right after that, right? So the first tenet of this philosophy of endurance, and this is macro for me, I got to work this out, but this is just me working out on the page. The first tenet of this philosophy of endurance is get to the fight with energy. Get to the fight with energy. And that has everything to do with the H2F, the holistic health and fitness. Are you mentally ready? Are you, sleep deprived, or do you get enough sleep? Nutrition, is that right? Is your spiritual aspect right? Is your physical right? Like, can we get to the fight with energy? Because once you get there, you still got to fight. And that's the second tenet, which is to win the first fight. And that's at the squad and the platoon level. And what I mean by win the first fight is, all of those characteristics of the offense, right? Surprise, concentration, audacity, and tempo. But having enough energy when you get there to actually win the fight. The third tenet has to do with a simultaneous effort, getting to the fight with energy, winning the fight, but then planning for the battle, right? Because we high five after we win the first fight, not thinking about the ensuing battle that's going to come. And I'm thinking about our time at GRTC. where we managed the transitions really, really well. We anticipated where we wanted all of our, class 4, class 5, all of that stuff we thought about to plan for the battle. So we don't just high five after we win the first fight and get smashed in the face in the battle. And thanks to you, I listened to that podcast with General Pappas. He talked about some of this stuff in that podcast and what the folks at JRTC are going through right now and where he sees the gaps associated with the units going through. The fourth tenet is endure to win, right? Endure to win. So it's not enough just to win the battle, right? There's a reconstitution phase, right? There's a reintegration phase that has to happen. And I think with all of those 4 elements, those can be metaphors for how we conduct daily business, even in garrison, right? Getting to the fight with energy. That's H2F. That's the battle rhythm, right? That's a work rest cycle. That's competition PT. That could be camaraderie across the brigade, across the different companies. That's an LPD program, and that's standards and discipline, right? Get to the fight with energy. That second tenet, right? Win the first fight. Keep it simple, stupid, like you talked about, right? Knock out the bunker, squad attack, platoon attack, reflexive fire, do the basics well, right? And then you can progress, mastering the basics and controlling the chaos. Because that's one thing about the 82nd that I realize is that there's no monopoly on knowledge there because everybody's in sort of the chaotic window of response and joint forcible entry. So everybody's sort of trying to figure this stuff out together. So, if we can just control the chaos, we can win the first fight. Plan the battle, which is the third one. Yeah, I'm going back through these with some specificity, but that's MDMP and everything. And you don't have to go through every step, but you can at least have a framework to get reps and sets of what that process might look like. So the staff, as they turn over, they fall into a process that we've been doing for quite a while. That's mental crosswalk at a junior level. Those basic tasks that we're talking about that, like if you're sitting on your phone and you got a metal crosswalk up there and that shoot of azimuth is not checked off, then you should probably be doing that. Transitions, companies placing demands on the battalion and then the battalion placing the demands on the brigade for the resources so that we can plan for the battle. And then endure to win, right? No single point of failure, mitigating Murphy, and then reading and writing. So that's a macro list of like philosophy of endurance, the 4 tenets, and then a specific level, what falls under each one of those. And I'll work all of this out because, like you said, lieutenants ain't gonna remember all of this stuff. Keep it simple, stupid, right? So I do think a philosophy of endurance will stick, though. I'll think through that as time goes on. Well, what are your thoughts on all of that? And that's a lot.
That's so good, man. I love the way you kind of you bucketed those things into 4 buckets like that. The right at the top, I heard somebody say this to me, and I don't know why I haven't heard this in 20-something years as an officer. It said, battalion commanders have a vision, not a philosophy, and it was like whoa. Like, because I've always referred to it as a philosophy, commander's philosophy, at different levels. But when he said that, it made me think: is it because a philosophy is yours? That's Trivius's philosophy, but a vision can be the Red Devils. The vision is now everybody's. We together have a vision for endurance. We together have a vision to get to the first fight and be ready. We together. And so instead of it being my commander's philosophy, it's our vision. And I was like, whoa. Yeah. And it almost was like control find, all philosophies turn into visions, going forward. It made me think about that. I loved it.
I like that. Yeah. I like that. I was talking to, I won't say his name, but mentor, I mentioned him to you earlier, and he talked about the chief's priority with respect to writing, right? Because that's been a big gap in the Army swing in terms of writing and sharing the perspectives from junior leaders across the brigades and our Army. And I had this idea. I slept on it. I woke up with this idea like I did with the virtual live fire thing, with General Rudd. I said, what if we created a red book for the Red Devils? And here's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to get with West Point Press, and I'm going to try quarterly to solicit a 2 to 3 page document from each warfighting function in the battalion once a quarter. So nothing like too crazy, but then publish that in what I will call a red book through West Point Press, so that I can kind of train the writing craft, but then sharing perspectives that most of the folks don't get to see in those 2-page exums, if you will.
Yeah.
I thought about that as getting after the Chiefs' priorities.
Yeah.
I might be ahead of the curve, but I thought about that. The Red Book. That sounds good. Red Book. Yeah.
Heck yeah, it does. And I like it. I like it as long as it doesn't get to the point where your team leaders and your squad leaders say my platoon leader is more interested in, writing essays than he is about knocking out a bunker and conducting platoon attack. It can't be one or the other. It has to be and. Yes, they understand their profession and their tactical responsibilities to fight and win in combat, and they become a professional writer, and they understand the profession of writing. Not one or the other. Not one or the other, because otherwise we're totally getting away from getting to the first fight and winning the first fight.
Well, I like this as a CQ and staff duty assignment.
Yeah.
Bring back those. I had to do that when I pulled staff duty when I was in 82nd. It's like write the brigade commander a paper on this topic, and I spent a couple hours doing that. Got me some shut eye and did my rounds, and that was it. So, but again, the sergeant major too will have huge buy-in in all of this. That's sort of where my mind's at right now, and it's a lot of stuff.
I love
to think about.
So I recently just got back from Fort Moore. And, I spent a week at Fort Moore doing the brigade commander's tactical fight club, fight course with General Buzzard and the Maneuver Center of Excellence. There was a ton of, brigade combat team commanders. The COG from JRTC, Matt Hardman, was there with us.
Mm-hmm.
The COG from JMRC came down. I was there for representing, JPMRC. So we were talking about, how does a brigade combat team fight? But you couldn't help but have a lot of conversations about command in general and leadership, and General Quintus and General Longo were our senior mentors that were there with us. So you couldn't help but have at least 50% of the conversations had to do with just brigade leadership and leadership and whole and command. And the biggest takeaways that I had, coming out of that course was keep it simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the brigade combat team level, do the basics. Fire and maneuver, understanding commander's intent, understanding how to do mission orders, understand graphic control measures, how to set priorities, how to synchronize fire and maneuver, right? It's the basics of large-scale operations, but at scale. And as soon as you go from, large scale, that's where things start to get more complicated and more complex, is when they start to scale out of proportion. The second thing that biggest takeaway from that course is that the Army's always changing. People are caught up with the size of organizations or the billets that they have in an organizations, or who's going to do reconnaissance and security. Is it going to be a cavalryman or is it going to be an infantryman? Someone's going to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So things are changing, but they're not changing that much. It's not so different today than it was 20-something years ago. There's an article from 1984, and it was about the light infantry divisions and the future of the light infantry division. It was written in a white paper, 1984, right? If you read that paper, it is eerie how, and I'll send it to you, it is eerie how that could be written yesterday. That exact white paper could have been written yesterday, and the future for our light infantry divisions. And someone had wrote that in 1984, going forward. It's amazing at how things have changed, but they haven't changed so much over the last over the last 30 years.
Yeah, your point about keep coming back to your point about audience, because it's so relevant about those 18 to 21-year-olds maybe not knowing why they're doing what they're doing. They just need to go out and execute, and they'll learn through the execution, perhaps, because that's the one. I don't really worry about it, but the world I'm in now is a world of big ideas, right? It's PhD land of big ideas and big words. But to your point, those soldiers don't need that. They got too much other stuff going on to worry about that kind of stuff. So I'm conscious of that and thinking about commanding with and through at echelon, like you said. The challenge, you mentioned this, the challenge is when you get all of those folks in one room, then how do you communicate to all of them simultaneously when you got three different audiences together?
Let me cover the first part real quick. When you said commanding through your leaders, if you tell the soldiers why they're doing it, You just pulled the rug out from under your platoon leaders and your company commanders.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's their job to explain to their soldiers why they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so let them do that. Tell them, give them their task and purpose, right? Give the soldiers their task and purpose. This is what they need to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes. And then when we're out in the field, right? So when we get out into the field and you got a little bit of downtime as you're loading ammo, that's when they can kind of come over and go, hey, sir, why are we doing it this way? And you can now you can get to know them in the field. But if you jump right at it in the classroom, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's how we're going to do it, you do all these things, you leave nothing for interpretation once we get out into the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, Malcolm Gladwell taught this about writing. You always got to leave a little something out so that they got a question.
Yeah.
They got a question to ask, right?
Yeah,
It doesn't mean you don't have the answer, and you give it to different people at different times. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You give certain things to the field grades and the company commanders. You give another things to the platoon leaders and the platoon sergeants. And then you give different information out to the soldiers, right? Like, remember when we were going to JRTC and I said, what wins at JRTC? What does it take to win at JRTC? 2 things, PT and attitude.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? So, but if you say that to a group of field grades and other battalion commanders, they go, come on, sir, we need to do more than just PT and attitude. Right? But the soldiers, that's all, they're like, I love it. All I got to do is PT and have a good attitude, and we're going to win at JRTC. Because on day 7, 8, 9, and 10, who's going to win? The person that's still up and going, that still has energy, that isn't feeling sorry for themselves. They're out there. They're ready to get after it. They got a great attitude. Maybe there's some information missing, but they're going to get it done because they got energy. They did their PT and they got a good attitude, PT and attitude.
Mm-hmm.
But that statement doesn't work. Like, remember when the OC said that to me? Come on, Matt, you need to do more than just have PT and attitude. I go, that message wasn't for you. That message was for the soldiers. If you noticed, 90% of the people standing in that formation were soldiers.
That's right. Oh, I like that. You have a gift in that kind of communication. Like, you're able to, I don't know what it is. Maybe you listen to all those motivational videos too much. It just seeps into you and you start to push it out. But I like that.
Trivius, what it is when I was a private first class, we had a company commander named Art Kandarian, right? And he's a legend in the Army and in the Ranger Regiment. Art Kandarian, he was known as Hurricane Art. He was a cog here at JRTC back in the day when I was a company commander, right?
Yeah.
But when we came to JRTC as a Ranger team leader, as Ranger machine gunner, I remember when it was getting ready to rain. We were getting ready to go into the box for 10 days under General McChrystal, right? And the Ranger Regiment we brought the whole Ranger Regiment to JRTC, and we were going to go from one side of the box to the other, and then we ended around turning it around and going back across the other way all over again. Right before we went into the box for 10 days, we knew, like, this is going to be rough. Like, I mean, I only got like 5 pairs of socks. It's 10 days. It's out there. It's already raining. We haven't even left yet. And all these trucks start lining up, and they start lining up in front of our tent, right? In the whatever the name of the holding area that we were at back in I think it was like 97, 98. And Art Kandarian stands in front of the whole Charlie company, and he starts talking like he's Henry V. He's like, we few, we happy few, we band of brothers. He starts like, for he who sheds his blood with me shall be my brother, right? And he goes, and it's raining, and we jumped on the trucks. We thought he was William Wallace, like standing in front of the company. We jumped on the trucks. We ripped the tops off so we could pull security. So we took the canvas off. We started pointing our weapons out to pull security. 5 minutes into the drive out into the box, it starts pouring, and now we're soaked, right? And we're like, oh man. But we were so damn fired up. He had us so fired up off of like that Henry V speech.
Oh yeah.
But I don't remember anything else he said. I was just so fired up to get there, to go out and get into the box and give it to Geronimo. And Stan McChrystal did the same thing. He probably gave us much better detail on what we were going to do and how we were going to do it and how we were going to win out there to different levels. But I don't remember it. I just remember how motivated I was, going in, and how much I trusted the leadership that I had, because he had given them a different message about how we were going to win once we got into the box.
Well, attitude is everything. And one of the things that you did for the squadron, one, I mean, besides keeping just a great attitude, is that it really was a learning organization at its core. And I talked to Dean Danis and Brian O'Connor and Bronco and Ezra Jones and Joe Bulk. I go down the list, Brian Adams, all of these folks who felt like they could fail, right, to learn and get better. And it wasn't like a toleration for negligence or anything like that. It was just like, hey, we're out here to win, but we're going to do it with a good attitude. We're going to have fun and we're going to learn together. And so, I've been in talks before where that environment did not persist, right? And so it just helped us get better. Attitude is everything.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, yeah. I don't know. I don't want to linger. We said a lot today. But I have to think deeply about some of this stuff, and I like the idea about vision vice philosophy. That makes sense to me. I hadn't heard that before, but that makes complete sense. And especially thinking about the nature of the airborne, you got to jump, fight, and win, but you got to jump and make movement to contact to the objective, right? So you got to have that energy, and we all know what the pre-jump looks like. It's a long time in the pack shed, long time in the aircraft. Like, can you hit the ground and walk another 13 miles or 10 clicks? Do you have the energy when you get to the line of departure, right, to step off and win the first fight? And so that's why I kept thinking about endurance, but it's a metaphor for other things too. Even thinking about like Army career and how we just get so tired, thinking about balancing the family and everything. You got to have endurance, right? And so I keep coming back to that term. That might be a mainstay in my vision here.
Yeah, I love the vision of endurance. The biggest thing I've learned, going from Fort Moore and then coming down here to JRTC to follow the COG around for a couple weeks. The thing that's resonating, a combination of running an operations group, whether it be at Joint Readiness Training Center or for me up there with our team in the Pacific at Fort Shafter. It's creating a mission essential condition, a condition of an organizational culture. If you don't have that first, right, when you come in, the organizational culture is not teamwork. It's not sharing information. It's not of learning. It's not where people feel like they can make mistakes and can grow. If you don't have that, you're gonna struggle right off the bat. And there's two things under organizational culture. The first one is good order and discipline, and the second one is doing routine things routinely. If you don't have good order and discipline, if you can't get the right people to the field, if you can't get the right people to the training exercise, if you spend more time dealing with non-healthy things, you don't have good order and discipline, your organizational culture is going to struggle. And then if you can't do routine things routinely, you're going to be spending way too much time, or you're not going to be doing things that don't matter, or you're not going to be ready when the time comes, whether that's your equipment, your weapon systems, having the right people, doing the right planning. And I think that is just an echelon above, like when you talked about your vision of endurance, get to the fight, win the first fight, plan the battle, and endure to win. At the battalion level. At the brigade level, organizational culture, good order and discipline, doing routine things routinely. Because now you're doing those four things that you talked about, but you're doing them at scale with 5 or 6 or 7 battalions or all your enablers. When people say things like, you got to provide resources. Yeah, part of providing resources is making sure that you got good order and discipline and that you have enough people, that your equipment is ready to go when it's time to go to the field. And you get that by doing routine things routinely. The second part, when I head from here, from JRTC, and I head up to Fort Shafter, the 196th Infantry Brigade, and the Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Center, how do you start to kind of figure out what direction that is going? Figure out, understand it, right? See everyone and see everything. That's the most basic of basic things that I always kind of trumpet. But the four things I'm going to be looking at as we go up there and as I prepare is. First, how do we make decisions? What's the decision authority? Who's allowed to make decisions for what? Who's allowed to say yes? Who's allowed to say no? How does that get passed around? And who's allowed to make decisions? How do we as an organization make decisions up and down the chain of command? Number two, how do we share information? Information management. How does information get from the lowest level to the top? How does it get from the top down out to all the organizations? How do we get it to the 25th Infantry Division? How do we share information with the 11th Airborne Division and our partners west of the international date line? How do we share information? Because if we don't have the information, we can't make good decisions. You have to have the information, the most accurate information, in order to make good decisions. So that's number 2. Number 3 is, how will we measure results? How will we know if we are doing the right things? How will we know if we are doing things properly and right? So what do we measure, and how do we measure the results that we get? That will determine how we're sharing information. And then if we share information, we'll be able to make good decisions based off the information we have, and whether or not we're achieving the results that we had hoped, and how that's working. And then all those 3 things will then lead you to your structure, the structure of an organization. A lot of times people change the structure right off the bat. That's the first thing that they want to change, right? They want to figure out who does what, who gets on what seat on the bus, right? But I believe structure, and I'm not the only person that believes this, right, is that the structure of the organization is determined based on how we make decisions, how we share information, and how we measure results. That will pretty much dictate how you set up your organization and what's the structure of your organization.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate, sir, everything you just said, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about, if a private gets a hold of this conversation and say, man, these 2 guys on a Sunday afternoon talking about the profession like this, they can rest easy that folks are thinking about this and say, man, I'm a part of that. I'm a part of all of that stuff. And that's really awesome. I will add a third thing to that, is appreciating the legacy that you fit into. Like the 25th, we always talked about the legacy and the history associated with that division. Certainly celebrated in the 82nd Airborne Division or the 101st, 3rd Infantry Division, places like that. But going back to, not even why we're doing what we're doing, but like, here's where you fit into a long, rich history of preserving democracy and freedoms. And here's your joint stint of the work. Even if it's something as minuscule as holding down a sector, that contributes to the larger piece of the pie. And making those soldiers know that they're a part of something special. That's something I would put in there. Because I know, for Red Devils, gosh, I mean, can't tell you how many phone calls and emails I've gotten already. Like, hey, don't fuck this up.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a part of something bigger than me,
Yeah. Making people feel part of something special is easier when you care as much as you care. Right. But once people know you care, all right, we got it. We know you care. But now I need you to execute behind that. Like, now I need you to get things done and get the right things done so that we are prepared when we go forward. It isn't just about being happy and about having a good time and about knowing that my leaders care. They also got to know what they're doing. They got to be competent as we move forward. And so putting in that little bit of extra work, getting focused, is the kind of thing that's going to make sure that you get it right once we take over.
When you talked about standards and discipline, how do you hold an organization accountable, even if they don't understand at the time that the rigor is good for them? Yeah, I guess the best case is Sobel. Lieutenant Sobel from Band of Brothers. Like that crew would not have been what they were without Sobel, but he was the most hated. But he was consistent. He was very consistent, but they did not like that guy. I think there was a mutiny there in one of those episodes.
Yeah, there was. This makes me think of hard training. You don't appreciate it while you're going through it, right? We all say it sucks. Like when you're wet, you're cold, you're tired, you're hungry, you're in the field, you're doing it for the 50th time. You're on, day 6 of 10 days in the box at one of the CTCs. Mm-hmm. You don't realize at the time that hard training is what's going to make you successful later on. Right. And we've all heard it in some way throughout our career of you'll appreciate this later. It's like our parents when they said, you'll thank me later, for doing this. And no one wants to hear that while you're going through it. Right. That you'll thank me later for all these, times I ran you through the battle drill, or you'll thank me later for all these long runs or all these foot marches, to get your feet tough. You'll thank us later. I don't know how to communicate that down to the soldiers other than through your presence, through you being there with them as you're going through it, And so I
Yeah.
think those kind of moments, they come to you at the moment. So for example, when someone says it's time for E3B, and 25th Infantry Division just finished up their E3B, and they had the the epic foot march that comes on the last day, and
Yep.
everybody's got to do the 12-miler. And what have we been doing for as long as we've been doing those exercises? Leaders get their rucksacks on, and leaders go walk with their people. Why? Because at mile 6 it just comes to you. Mile 6 or 7, a captain or a lieutenant or a sergeant or a specialist will say, "Hey, sir. Hey, ma'am. Hey, sergeant. Why do we do a 12-mile foot march as part of an expert field medical badge?" And you'll say, "Because when you get done with all these tasks, and you get done with this long foot march, you'll be able to say something along the lines of, if I can do that, I can do anything.
That's right.
If I made it through that spur ride." I remember when one of our guys said, "If I made it through that spur ride, sir, I can make it through anything." People that made it, that's what I said when I made it through Ranger School. As much as it sucked, when that was over, I said, if I made it through that, I can do anything. I can make it through anything in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, most of those skills that you're doing, they're important, but they're perishable too. But it's not about, the disassembly, reassembly function check of an M4. It ain't really about that. It's about the attention to detail, the procedure, the mental work you got to do to concentrate on that when you're tired and hungry. And I think that's one of the huge benefits of Ranger School. But not everybody gets to go to Ranger School, so you got E3B. You got other opportunities to do that. But the point you said about presence, right? Think of Thelma Till.
Yeah.
Right, when she was out there with her company doing that roll march coming in, like stuff like that really matters. Yeah.
And I think what it does when you do hard training, you don't always have to jump straight to the EIB 12-mile foot march, right? That doesn't need to be the first thing that brand new soldiers are doing. But when they do something hard and they get out into the field, let's say it's a 5-day field problem and it's really hard. It rained 2 of the days, they got wet. What is it going to do? It's going to teach them how to be better prepared for the next time, how to bring foot powder, how to bring socks, how to bring, the proper equipment. Jim Shutt always used to say there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. You brought the wrong stuff, right? When you do these things, it gives you like something to go off. It said, hey, last time I had to do something that required tons of tasks, so things that I had to remember, and some physical events like E3B. Oh, okay, what did we do? We did 2 weeks ahead of time. We did preparation. We set up lanes that looked exactly like the lane, and we just ran ourselves through it over and over and over. So now if you got to go to the Ukraine, and when we had to go to the Ukraine in 2014, we had to go and train the Ukrainian army on how to do battle drills. So what did we do? We got butcher blocks out. We got sergeants standing in front of butcher blocks, drawing pictures on how to knock out a bunker. Right? And then they practiced over and over and over how to do this thing. So when they stood in front of a bunch of Ukrainian soldiers, they would say, this is how you do knock out a bunker. And then the translator would then translate it into their language, because you had to stop and pause, right? How did they do it? They said, hey, this is just like Jump Master School. This is just like going through EIB, right? And you were translating something that was happening in a wartime scenario all the way back to something that you had done maybe 5-10 years ago, maybe only a year ago. And so it gives them an example of hard training, so that when the times get tough, they can revert back to, let's just do it like we did it when it was at JRTC. I've never had to do something like this, but let's do it like we did when we were doing EIB. That's how we'll get good.
Yeah, you know what I miss is that old 7-8, the old school FM 7-8, platoon, infantry platoon squad. I was talking to some cadets down at Tuskegee a couple weeks ago, and I was trying to tell them, I said, hey, this stuff is simple. I said, take that 7-8. I know there's some still at the university because they keep them there, and go get you some little G-man, those little plastic army men, and put out your little wedge, your fire team wedge, and your squad, in column and wedges, and just go through that stuff. I don't know. It's I geek out about that kind of stuff. It's really fun, but it's the simple stuff,
Yeah. Keeping it simple.
Yeah.
Keeping it simple.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, I want to respect your time. We're coming up on an hour here, and we put out a lot. I appreciate this one. This is good. This was really, really good.
Yeah.
Bring back a lot of memories as I develop this vision of endurance.
Yeah.
And you prepare for brigade command as well. This is going to help a lot of people. It's definitely going to help me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I appreciate you asking. I appreciate you taking the time to talk through some of these things, because as you start to prepare for command, although as a battalion commander, I think that this is the most prepared you'll be for anything you've ever done in the Army, that doesn't mean you're not going to do the preparation ahead of time. We know you're going to do the preparation at the pre-command courses, and you're going to start to think through some of these things as you go forward. And I think sharing it with people is the way to go. You know, you put something together, you ask somebody. I got some folks right now that I communicate with on pretty regularly about, hey, I'm thinking about this for a vision. I'm thinking about this for philosophy. I'm thinking about this for some training as we go. What do you think? And start to develop who's your board of directors? Who are those people that are around you that you can start to bounce these ideas off? You know, you got your tactical folks, you got your more professional development folks, you got your how to use my time efficiency type folks, and you got your folks that are good order and discipline that you can bounce some things off them to get some ideas. And so I look forward to the next round of this, which is once we've had a chance for some of this to kind of soak in, to hear from other folks and to hear from them and say, hey, all right, this is what I need you to cover in the next one. This is what I need you to cover next time.
Yeah. As you're talking, I'm thinking Ben Scott. Scott.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give him a call and talk to him this evening. No, it's great. Well, I appreciate it, sir. I'm gonna log off the net here, so it should be good. I hope you can get you a good steak out there while you're out there.
I'm gonna go find one. All right, we'll talk again soon.
All right, sir. Take it easy. Have a good one. All right, Airborne.
Thanks for listening today. I hope we sparked some thoughts about the people that have inspired you to be who you are today. I hope you share some of your thoughts, and better yet, demonstrate them for the people in your life. Our pursuit is to get a little bit better every day. Progress equals small victories stacked on top of each other, building like compound interest. Keep stacking these positive habits like getting up early, working your butt off, learning something new, being positive, and surrounding yourself with phenomenal people. Please share your comments at the links in the show notes and DM us at Teach Me to Fish podcast on Instagram or Facebook. Looking forward to our next conversation.
Times don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world, but keep the sky on your mind.